Okay, let's get started here. Can you hear me? Good morning. Good morning. It is June 1st, the beginning of the month here. Great. Hopefully you can hear me. It is week 2, live lecture 2. And let's get started here. All right. So, did you have a good weekend? Have any questions from last week? I know I'm still kind of going through grades for your week 1 work. So if you have not turned in your work as of yet, please get that in as soon as possible. Like I said, I'm going through grades today. By the end of the day, it should be all done, hopefully. So keep up the great work and, get yourself ready for this new week so that we can successfully time manage this whole week and get your work done so that you can learn a lot and not be under pressure and, do what you need to do and get it done. All right. So no questions here. Let's see if anybody else comes in, but if you have any questions, let me know. I know some of you had issues zipping and turning that in. It looks like a lot of you guys did get that resolved, so that's good. If you're still having issues, let me know. I can try to help you, but for the most part, it seems like everybody's pretty much good to go. So week 2, as we go into week 2, we always like to go over the learning objectives for every week, because this is basically what you're going to be walking away from learning from week to week. And we do a lot of stuff. So sometimes we forget, especially when we get to week 4, how much we did go over. So it's nice to kind of review what we're going to be doing this week, kind of get our minds set to, okay, this is what we're doing, focus on this week, and then go to the next. So this week, we're going to utilize, excuse me, I'm actually drinking coffee trying to get my throat cleared here. It's just one of those morning things, I guess. So we're going to utilize the basic functionality of 3 drawing tools within industry standard software. You guys are going to have, I think, a lot of fun this week, because we're going to be diving into Adobe Illustrator, which I think is really super fun to work with and to get to know all the basic tools in there. So we have a fun assignment coming up, and also an assessment that I think a lot of you guys will enjoy. Utilize basic text input functionality within industry standard visual communication software. So basically what that means is we're going to be utilizing the type tool in Illustrator and kind of playing around with that type tool and learning kind of the basics of design and how to organize your text. Identify and discuss the strengths of 3 Adobe software applications utilized in professional graphic design. So basically what we're going to be discussing are the 3 big ones: Adobe Illustrator, Adobe, I don't know if we're going to be discussing Adobe InDesign, but Adobe Photoshop for sure. So we're going to be identifying the strengths of these 3 software applications in the discussions. And then we're also going to discuss the importance of developing personal help-seeking research skills surrounding a basic function of industry standard hardware to ensure timely project completion. So you guys are basically going to be discussing a lot of the differences between the Adobe software this week, which will be good, because each program has their own purpose. And as a designer, it's important to understand which program to use for a certain purpose for a project, because you don't want to use the wrong tool for the job, right? Because what happens is, if you use the wrong tool for the job or a project, it's not going to come out very well. It might take longer. It might not produce as well. So that's why it's important to understand the purposes between each of them, so that it prepares you to say, okay, this is the project. We're going to start this in this particular software and do it correctly. Because there are some, they're pretty similar in how they navigate and how they look in terms of panels, but they are definitely, there's differences for them in regards to your projects too. So what are we going to do for week 2? What's going on today? What we're going to cover is learning objectives, which we just did. So that's out of the way. We're going to talk about your 2 discussions. We are going to do a little Adobe software overview using help resources. We're going to talk about that. And then we'll go right into your assignment and your assessment demo and overview. So if you have any questions, you'll hopefully get it cleared up then. All right, so let's go forward here into week 2, discussing Adobe software. And again, this is all part of your discussion. We're going to be looking at researching help sites to build your help-seeking tech toolboxes, getting started with Adobe Illustrator, and getting started with typography. I always like to tell my students, there could be a class just for typography that you could take for 2 years. That's how involved typography is. It's just one of those things that you always keep learning new things about, you know, the history of type, for example. There goes my clock. But just typography in general with how you use it in design is also another topic. So there's a lot of things that you can learn in typography. We're going to kind of get just a little brush, a little foundation of the beginning and the basics so that we can understand the tools and how to integrate type within a project. I did post this, and you probably saw this in, excuse me, in announcements. This is just a nice little infographic visual because I'm a visual person. You guys are all visual people. We like to usually learn visually too. When we see things, we learn a little bit easier when it's a visual application. So this is kind of a nice breakdown of visual and verbal information about each of these big programs that you will use as a designer. We will be going over the first 2 in this class, the basics and the foundations, but it kind of tells you what each program is for. So Photoshop is for color correction, mostly used for retouching and enhancement of photos. It's used for special effects, creation of web and motion graphics, and user interface mobile design. Photoshop is a raster-based program. So what that means is it's pixel dependent. So it depends on pixels in order to create the image, okay? So that's why you can go in and make those really subtle color corrections by choosing the little pixels. That's why it's good to use for photoshopping pictures and manipulating them for retouches. Illustrator, on the other hand, is not a raster-based program. It's a vector-based program. And it's a little hard to explain, but basically the differences between Photoshop and Illustrator, Illustrator is not pixel dependent. It doesn't use pixels to create a picture. It actually goes through lines and mathematical equations and comes up with the design in that regard, so that if you were to do any type of manipulation, say to a logo in Illustrator, and you were to create the logo in Illustrator, you could blow that logo up bigger than a billboard and it still will be super sharp. It will never get pixelated because it's it's not pixel dependent. So it's not based on pixels, it's based on lines and mathematical equations to come up with those lines. So points and lines. So that's the purpose of Illustrator, to do anything in Illustrator that won't be pixelated, like logo marks. You want to not do that initially in Photoshop. If you have a logo project, do not go right into Photoshop and do a logo project. I'm not saying you can't. You can. You're going to run into issues because at some point that logo will need to be scaled higher beyond the resolution, and you will definitely have pixelation issues. All right, so Illustrator is a logo, monogram, and insignia design program. Again, vector illustrations are done in there. So if you had to do any type of like icon creation, anything, I usually use Illustrator. And I like to say kind of how I manipulate all the 3 softwares. I mean, I go back and forth between all of these. So when I worked for the publication, for example, and I'm going to give you real world experience of how I worked with these programs. When I worked for the publication and I did magazine layout, I would be, for example, I would get the cover design. So that would be a one big image for, on the cover. And I would usually take that into Photoshop and get it ready if I need to do any color corrections or resizing, and then I'd have to change the color mode for print purposes from RGB to CMYK for print. That's another thing for for print. You want to change the color mode and the resolution. We're going to get to that later. And then I would take that photo and I would take it like say if I needed a banner to go on the bottom, like just nice little illustrated banner, like a little swooshy banner, I would actually do that in Illustrator. So I would open up Illustrator and I would create the little banner in Illustrator. And then what I would do is open up InDesign when I'm ready to lay it out, and I would place that image that I created in Photoshop. I would save it out as a TIFF image. And that just means that it's being, it's at its highest resolution, but it's a file format for print purposes. I would import that into InDesign, the size of my, that I needed to put it in. Usually it's an 8.5 by 11. And then I would save out my little banner I did in Illustrator. And I could either save that out as a TIFF or a high-res PDF and place that into InDesign. And then I would do my text in InDesign, because InDesign is a great program for text manipulation in terms of a lot of type, dealing with alignment and style sheets, keeping everything consistent. So InDesign is a multi-page document created. It basically deals with multiple pages. It's a kind of like a publication program. So you would do a lot of books, brochures, things that had a lot of pages in it. You would do InDesign and you would lay it out in, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't use it for like a one-page ad. I've used it for one-page ads where I import everything and then I do the text manipulation in InDesign as a one-page ad. It's just a nice way to, like I said, control the type and the text. It deals with master pages and page numbering, which you'll learn as you go forward. It helps with consistency and your proficiency as a designer. It helps you with all that type so you're not manually creating the same thing over and over again. Text wrap and type settings and file packaging. So those are the three big ones that I use every day and that you will be getting more comfortable with. We're going to be dealing with the Photoshop and Illustrator in this class a little bit more. InDesign is basically not going to be talked about too much, just kind of in discussions. So just know that these are the three big Adobe software that designers use today. Now that doesn't mean it's the only software that we use, but those are the three big ones. All right, as we go forward, there are help-seeking resources that you have available, and me too, that I use in regards to, if you need extra how-to videos, you want to keep up to date with programs because they change all the time. They're always adding new things, changing the software itself, and they do updates. So adobe.com is one resource that is a great one to kind of always keep an eye on and to bookmark on your in your computer. It's always a nice way to learn about new apps that are coming out as well. Adobe Exchange is another resource that you can use for help, if you're needing help in regards to certain programs. And lynda.com actually changed to LinkedIn Learning, so that I should probably put that in there. Lynda.com basically transferred into LinkedIn Learning, so that's kind of what it's referred to now. We used to use Lynda.com as our resources here, but now obviously it's the LinkedIn Learning, and that is available to you guys. Let me go into Canvas here so you can see where that's at. If you haven't seen it yet, just go into your modules. And you can go into and log into it here. It's LinkedIn Learning Student Access Portal, and that'll log you right into LinkedIn Learning. And what's neat about this, I have to do my password, is you could type in once you get in there, and I'm not going to go through that. You can do like certain searches for whatever you're looking for, like say a certain program or certain thing that you're trying to learn. It's a nice resource, and it's available to you guys, which is great. All right. Any questions about that? We're going to get into your discussion too, but any questions about that? Pretty self-explanatory here. And again, in announcements, I posted, let's see here. Boop. I posted that same infographic so that you guys can have that. So that's in there. All right, so let's look at your discussion for this week. Again, you have 2 discussions. Zoom in here. And we're going to look a little bit more into each Adobe software for this discussion. Go ahead and read through the career relevancy, and the background talks about Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, kind of what we just kind of went over very quickly, but there's little small chunked videos in here. You can, you know, it kind of explains it a little bit more in detail about each program, so it's great to look at these. These are like 10 minutes long each. There's 13 minutes and 10 minutes, yeah. So go ahead and listen to that. I'm gonna skip on down here to the prompt. Okay, it says locate your Adobe Creative Cloud desktop application icon. It is at the top of your screen. Note, if you have not installed Adobe yet, please contact your instructor or FPA. You will need Adobe for this class. You're going to click on the icon, read through the list of potential Adobe applications. Let's imagine you're starting a position as a graphic artist or Universal Studios Orlando theme park, and they're using non-Adobe based products for large-scale designs throughout the park. You have been tasked with designing Halloween Horror Nights materials for the haunted house images. How could you use Adobe-based software to enhance the production and convince the company that non-Adobe-based products won't produce the best effects or at all? Explain your reasoning. For your reply post, you can consider and add on to ideas that other students came up with in regards to Adobe application alternatives. You could even include any experiences you have had with a particular Adobe application and how it could be more beneficial to the project. For your citation, you might research articles that discuss the function and purpose of the application you choose. You can also find articles from experts on how they utilize these applications in graphic design. I actually just posted a little first post here to kind of get you guys started here. And I just said, let's dig into this week's discussion about alternative software. There are pros and cons for everything, including software. As we go forward to answer the prompted discussion, think about the pros and cons of particular software that might do the same exact thing as an Adobe product. So for example, Adobe Illustrator versus Inkscape versus CorelDRAW. In order to understand the pros and cons of each, you need to understand the software itself and what it does. So I have a little useful link that shows both the pros and cons of all of these. So you can use articles such as this in your discussion to back up and explain in your own words your perspective. So for example, from my experience, I would not recommend using Inkscape versus Adobe Illustrator for this job because of the cons of Inkscape. Cross-platform. Since Adobe is the industry standard, Adobe's proprietary formats tend to be what's most commonly used by designers and clients. This can pose a problem with someone else when someone else wants you to send an Adobe file for you to work on. So here's the link here so you can kind of read through. Because just because there's Illustrator is a vector-based program. There's other vector-based programs that are available out there too. Like for instance, I learned on Freehand, another program that's not an Adobe product. I think it's a Macromedia product. And I learned that first. And it does the same thing as Illustrator does, just in it's a different software, but it shows you the pros and cons of each. So this might be a really nice article for you guys to get started if you're stuck. So just kind of discuss that in your own way, the prompted question and why you would tell the Universal Studios why using Adobe products is, you know, overall better than other products. And that could be something that you could definitely talk about is the idea of the format's not the same if you're not using the same format, cross-platform format. Any questions about that? Kind of get you started with that discussion. If you're quiet, I'll just think that you're not really, you have no questions, so we'll just go on. All right. So that's your first discussion. Your second discussion will be help-seeking skills. So kind of like talking about what you need, what personal skills that you have to use to find the help that you need to succeed. So you're talking about these help-seeking skills here. So go ahead and read through this background. There's a nice little 4-minute video here to gain an industry perspective on the role of designer and how to learn more about your field. Help with design. Again, we just talked about this, adobe.com, Adobe Education Exchange, things that lynda.com, that's now the LinkedIn Learning, all of these resources that I even still use to update myself. And also, if I have an issue, I can go right to those resources. Okay, so in this discussion, you will talk about the importance of developing personal help-seeking researching skills. Imagine you are attending graphic design networking event. You meet someone who tells you that they graduated 20 years ago and are struggling to find work. They are getting comments from potential employers that their portfolio feels dated and their skill set feels irrelevant. They're not sure what to do and are thinking maybe they just are not cut out to be a designer. Considering the situation mentioned above, and think about what skill set pieces would be highly desirable to potential employers. Describe the skill sets you consider the most important to highlight in a portfolio to get you in the door for a potential job or career. If a graphic artist is unable to present a portfolio, what are alternative ways that they can showcase their talents? In your response to others, you can use examples of how you or someone you know use alternative help-seeking skills and how it was positively affected you or them. Describe the method that was used and why it was a valuable tool. Don't forget, for your citation, you might research articles that discuss help-seeking. You can also find articles from experts on beneficial places for continuing education and how to keep your design skills relevant. Also, in both discussions, don't forget to hit upon all of your requirements here, which are the how long and substantial your post is. Make sure you have a citation in there and you're responding to 2 peers on separate days. Posting your initial post before Wednesday midnight as well. So I, again, kind of posted the first post here, and I said, as you go forward into this second discussion this week, think about ways that keep you yourself up to date besides attending school as a future designer. Are there any other ways to learn and keep up to date as a designer without the aid of school? I know personally I have used resources such as lynda.com and adobe.com. Describe a method that can be used and why it is a valuable tool. Maybe there are resources that someone else may not be aware of that maybe are useful to learn new skills. You can share it here, okay? So there might be, places that you go that you bookmarked, say online, or, resources that other people may not know about that you can share in here as well. I know in my perspective, I actually had, I had a situation where I graduated with my undergrad with a guy that ended up not finding a design job. I think he graduated with his bachelor's in graphic design with me. And then I spoke to him probably, I want to say like 5 or 10 years later. We got together and he was not working in the design field, but kind of expressed maybe wanting to. And his big fear was, now that I've been out of it this long, how do I get my skills up to speed and also my work? Now that's a little bit more challenging because he has been out of school that long, but it doesn't necessarily mean he can't do it. And my response to that was, get yourself back into the groove by looking at resources like adobe.com. Start working in the programs again if you have them. You know, YouTube. You guys all know there's other resources out there besides the one listed in here. Share those. How would you, how would you go about explaining this in your own words to somebody who, is in this situation? Also, are there alternative portfolio sites that you can use? I know I've used several online. I've used issue.com to show my work. Issue.com is a publication site that's like a flip book, and you can send a link to whoever wants to see your work. And what's nice about issue.com, by using a digital version of a book, you can customize your portfolio to whomever you're sending it to. Because sometimes you don't want to show all of your work to a certain employer. You want to kind of focus in on whatever they're doing. Like if, for instance, if they're looking for someone who can do more package design, you might need to change up your portfolio for them to see more of the packaging side of what you've done. And that may become down the road, because when you're a student and you're graduating, you don't really have that much to show. So you're kind of starting with what you have from school. But as you go forward and actually gain experience, you'll be gaining more and more portfolio work, and you can customize it based on that. All right, any questions about that? So you're basically giving advice, to this person and trying to give them some tips and tricks on how to stay relevant. Okay. No questions. This is easy peasy. We only have one person in here, so I don't want to put you on the on a spotlight either. So if you have any questions, if you're listening to this recording and you have questions, please let me know. I'm here. Also, don't forget your learning coach is also available, Craig. If I am not, if I am too busy, which I'm trying not to be, but if say you can't get a hold of me in the time that you need, Craig is also here too. And also we have a learning coach, which I posted this actually in announcements yesterday. We have a learning coach as well as the lab instructor. I posted her schedule and her contact information there as well. Okay, so always keep an eye on the announcements for that reason. Okay, let me get that out of the way. All right, so let's take a look at your assignment 2. I think this is pretty exciting. This is a really, really cool project. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And basically what we're gonna be doing is creating a really cool neighborhood illustration. And this can be of your neighborhood, but it doesn't have to be. If you wanna do, another neighborhood, that's fine. I've had students last mod that were like, you know what, I live in the city and I have an apartment and it's a lot. And I'm like, you know what, do whatever you want to do. Just make it look like it's a neighborhood. If it's a neighborhood, say your mom and dad live in or friends, you can still do an apartment style, illustration as well. But make it look like a little neighborhood front perspective. I had a lot of students doing like a map view, which is like a top-down view. So I think what we really want to see here is a frontal view of a landscape, and that's kind of what you see here as an example. So you're going to open a new document in Illustrator, and you're going to save it, and we'll look at the instructions here in a second. This is a slide just covering the basics. So you're going to size it at 8.5 by 11, landscape orientation. That means it's wider than it is tall. You're going to save it as such, so assignment 2, your first and last name. You're going to use all the options in the shapes tool. So we'll look at rectangle, polygon, ellipse, and line segment to create your neighborhood scene. Use the selection and direct selection tools to move and alter your shapes as necessary. Use your swatch panels to add color to each shape using both stroke and fill settings. And then you're going to save your file once more, and you'll submit your AI file. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Illustrator, and I'll start by just showing you the basics. And some of you probably have looked at this program before, maybe played around with it. But let's go ahead and check this out. So I see a lot of my previous stuff that I've worked on in here, so just kind of ignore that right now. It's one of those things. Oh, you know what? Before I go, I wanted to show you something too. Hold on one second. Remember how we were talking about the little app on, and this is kind of, I forgot about this. The little iCloud app is up here on the very top. So that's where you would look for that. So you're getting into your Adobe Cloud right here. And we were talking about that earlier, so that's how you would get to that. I forgot to share that. So there you go. All right, so let's go back to Illustrator, and hopefully you're aware of that anyway, because that's how you downloaded your Adobe software. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into Illustrator and we're gonna go File, New, and you'll see this is kind of like I said, this is different probably down here for you, but you're gonna see kind of a couple ways to open up a new document. You have a Create New, or you have an Open, or you can go up here on your Finder and do File, New, which I don't know if you guys can see me doing that. Let me share my desktop. Sometimes my menu bar gets lost up here. Okay, so you would go to File, New, and when this document pops up, it's going to give you some templates to pick from if you don't want to do a customized typed in width and height over here. You also have versions of, say you wanted to do mobile. This is for, you know, if you're working on a phone design, a web design, and print. But we're just going to go to recent, and we're just going to make sure that this is 8.5 by 11, but you want to do landscape. So you can just click right here on the landscape and it's going to switch your width to your height. Width is 11 inches by 8.5. Now just remember, you want to be in inches. So if this does not say inches, say it says points or pixels, you want to change this to inches. I've had some students not change that, and it's like, it's kind of frustrating on their part, because I have to, you know, have them redo it. Okay, so when you open up Illustrator, you may see the same thing as me with all these little panels open, or you may not. On the upper right-hand corner up here, there's a little drop down, which may say Essentials. But what this is it kind of allows you to organize your panels for a specific reason. So let's say if you're working more in typography, you could choose typography. These are all defaulted ones, and it's going to bring up panels based on typography that you would use. Web, if you're basically designing for the web, you would choose web. Printing and proofing, painting, if you want to do more painting, you could choose that. Essentials is pretty much what you would use essentially, you know, just the general stuff. And then you can create your, you know, if you wanted to do your own workspace, you could actually name it art class. So DGD101. And then whatever you set your panels to, whatever panels that you have out here, let's say you bring out the Pathfinder, you go up to window, nothing, let's see here, stroke comes out. You can set your panels so these will always appear, and these panels are movable, but they'll always appear whenever you have it set in this work mode. And that's nice, because that kind of allows you to not have to worry about going up here and choosing all these panels every time you open it. You know, it saves your preferences in the panels that you're working in. Now these panels can be interlocked. If you kind of join them like this, they can be locked in together, or you can have them separate. You can close them. They never really totally disappear. You can always find them back up here in the window. You know, so if you're looking for a line, and sometimes they cascade if they're attached to a panel, you can pull them out. Sometimes they tab cascade into each other if you want to save your workspace, because, you know, typically you want your workspace to be pretty free and clear of everything so that you have room to design. Now this is your toolbar, and your toolbar is kind of interesting because you have all the tools in here that you you know, basically work on all your general tools, and we'll go over some of these. But every panel box has this sizing option up here in the right-hand corner. If you click on that, it's going to change the orientation of your panel box. So you can do a 1 column or a 2 column. It doesn't change what's in here. It just makes it so that, you know, if you want to kind of hide this over to the side, it doesn't take as much room width-wise. So it's really a preference that you have in Illustrator. Give me 1 second here. So it's all about preferences and how you work that will kind of determine what you see on there. All right, hold on 1 second. Let me bring up, I know I have the lecture quiz coming up, so I want to make sure I'm bringing up some keywords here and not missing the lecture quiz stuff. Okay. Okay, so one of your lecture quizzes is talking about the artboards in Illustrator. And what artboards is, this is your artboard. Okay, so this is basically the white page you see here. And you can have multiple artboards. Like I had just one here, but if you go to artboards panel, you can see that you can duplicate this if you drag it and drop it down into this little corner. It says new artboard, or if you go to the panels box, you can say new artboard and add another one. And as you see, you're adding them in, they show vertically in the panel box. You can see that they're adding onto your document. So the artboard setting in Adobe Illustrator refers to the number of pages in your document. So that's important to know. Okay, another thing to kind of keep in mind, and this is also on your lecture quiz, by the way, there is a brightness setting. You can notice mine's probably a little different here than possibly yours. If you go up to your preferences, which you will have to click on the little apple. Oh, I'm sorry, not the apple. If you go up to Illustrator and you go to preferences, sorry, my bad. If you go up to the Illustrator word on your Finder and you choose preferences, and let's go to user interface, I believe it is. Yes, user interface. You can set the brightness so that it's comfortable for you. You know, some like it to be more neutral gray, some like to be dark. There's a medium light, and it changes the way that the artboard looks. So the best brightness option to use for Illustrator is the medium light one, just because I believe that doesn't interfere as much with colors that you're using in Illustrator. It's a very neutral color. This is the medium light. Now, if you had, say, issues with your eyes, that might be a totally different thing going on, but the medium light is the preferred, the best brightness option to use based on colors and all of that good stuff. Okay. So another question on the quiz is talking about your toolbar, and I have a different preference, but some people have preferences on working with the 2 column or the 1 column. For the quiz itself, it's asking how many columns in the Illustrator toolbar I would prefer working with. Just answer 2, 2 column. I'm a little different because I don't know. I guess this is based on whoever created this quiz. But the answer would be 2. It's a little strange, but I usually work in 1, but the preferred for the lecture is 2. So I don't want to, you know, I don't want to confuse you, but that's kind of what that is. Okay. So you have these artboards. You can always delete these artboards too. If you hit delete and you select them on in your panel, you can delete those artboards. You just need 1 artboard for this assignment. So what you're going to do is you're going to create an illustration of your neighborhood. So let me go back to our instructions here. And actually, let me go into our actual assignment instructions right here. And let me share my screen. So you're going to use the different tools. So the shape tool, selection tool, direct selection tool, we're going to talk about that. So basically you're going to create a simple illustration of a house or a few houses in your neighborhood. Your illustration will need to include at least 5 objects and be in a street view, looking at a house from the sidewalk. These objects can be houses, trees, plants, people, cars, etc. Do not overthink the visual details. Instead, think about how you can break each complex object down into simple shapes. As you're creating your illustration, also use your swatches panel to add color to each object. When you're considering using color, think about what mood you would like to set with your illustration. I've had students do like a night mood, like looks like at nighttime or sunset. So that's kind of what that's talking about there. All right, so let's go ahead. We kind of read over that anyway. So let's go ahead back into Illustrator and let me introduce you to the tools. So you have if you hover over these tools in the toolbar, it will intuitively tell you what these are too, so that's kind of helpful. You have your black selection tool arrow, I say black arrow and white arrow. The black arrow is your selection tool and the white arrow is your direct selection tool. You have your pen tools, which you don't necessarily have to use for this assignment, but you will be using your shapes tool. Now, your shape might be different. Mine's starting with the square rectangle. Typically, if there's a little arrow at the very bottom of the tool, it means if you click and hold that click, you'll have many other options to use. You can always tear this off too, and I say tear it off, but you can always, if you don't want to click and hold that click and you want these to be out on your artboard all the time, you just click on that right hand side. I don't know if you saw me do that, this part here. If you click on that, it'll give you the tools up here so you don't have to toggle through. But you have your rectangle, your ellipse, your polygon, your star, and your line segment tool. So if you click and drag with your square tool or any shape tool, click on your artboard and drag anywhere, it's going to create your shape. And it'll fill it based on your color and your fill and your stroke. So the fill usually looks like a square with color, and your stroke is what it is. It's the outline. So you can always change this. So say if you wanted your fill, and let me bring up my swatches, color swatches. If you go up to window and you choose swatches, this will bring up your color swatches, which is kind of nice to have here if you want to kind of play around with color. With this foreground being fill here, I'm going to choose a color. See how it kind of changed it? You can change its color here. Now, if this is switch, so if I click on the stroke first or hit this little arrow, it's going to flip it so that the stroke changes to the color. Say like, okay, so let's say you want to do a red stroke instead of a black. You can select just as long as it's forward in this order, you can change the color. Now the stroke is really thin and I can't really see it, so I'm going to change that stroke. So I'm going to go to Window, Stroke, and you can always change the thickness or the thinness of the stroke using the stroke panel. Let's go to, right now it's at 1 point, let's go to 16 point. You can see it kind of getting bigger there. So that's how you would change that. Now, the selection tool allows you to move your shapes around. You can actually resize this. You can even rotate it. These little rotate handles come up when you're hovering over. So this is basically to move your shape. Now the difference between your move tool and your direct selection tool, your move tool is there to select an image, move it, manipulate it in a way that's all as one shape. You can even delete it on your keyboard, completely up to you. The white arrow, the direct selection tool, is where you can actually go in, and these are called vector points. Let me zoom in here. So you have your line, and then you have these little white boxes, which are called vector points. And these vector points is what makes up your shape. So with the direct selection tool, you can click on any of these vector points individually and manipulate them as well. So that's the way you can actually go in. And now you can, if you hold down the shift key, you could do 2 points at one time. But typically you want to maybe say just manipulate just the one vector. You can just click on it. Now you can't do that with the selection tool. You can only do that with the direct selection tool. Okay, so that's the differences between the two. So if you wanted to manipulate an object further with the vector points being changed, you could do that there. Let's do an ellipse tool. If you hold down the shift key before you click and drag, that's how you could do a perfect circle. It's proportionate. Now, if you don't do that, you don't hold it down, it could be like an oval, and then you can go in and, you know, resize it with your move tool, or change the actual, say the actual, and we call this the curve, the Bézier curve with this. Well, let me zoom in. This is a little different because it's a circle. The rectangle didn't have this option, but if I selected the direct selection tool again and clicked on our vector points, because it's a curved object, we see that this is called a handlebar. And these handlebars are very, very small, so you might need to zoom in. Zooming in is also nice. I'm zoomed in at 200%. And you can do so with the magnifying glass over here, or shortcut key, which is a Command plus on your keyboard. So zoomed in here, I can see that this is a vector point, and when I click on it, I get these handlebars. So these handlebars can be manipulated with your direct selection tool. If you hold and click and hold and drag and click these little handlebars, you can still even move that vector point as well. But this is a way that you can manipulate not only a vector point, but also a curve if it has one, so that you can change the overall curve of it, look of it. So that the direct selection tool really kind of helps you manipulate your lines and your curves. Okay, that's kind of cool. So that's the ellipse tool. The polygonal tool is, again, just what it is. You can create polygons. Stars, same thing. And you click and drag, make the star bigger. The line tool is basically what it is too. You can create lines. If you click and drag, you can create these lines. So you can, you know, let's see here. Then you can change the stroke again in the stroke area. Where's my stroke? So if you wanted to trace something, let's cancel here. You can click and drag the traced, click and drag, and then you can manipulate the line, you know, by just clicking on it. The only thing with the line tool, if you want to, say if you're doing, you have to keep setting the different lines. If you want to make it a shape, and I had students have issues with this before because they were just using the line tool for a lot of details. They wanted to create a fill. Because it's not a closed shape, it can never really truly be filled unless it's a closed shape. So it's a little bit more advanced, but I want to show you this because some students were having this issue before. Like, you know, if you do a square, it's a closed shape, so you can fill it. I had students in here that were doing like creating shapes with just this line, and then they were trying to fill it, but they couldn't because it's not a closed shape. So if you wanted to fill this line up eventually, let's say if you wanted to create a shape like maybe like a roof, okay? And you did one line like that, and you did one line like that, and then you did a line like this to close that. Well, it's not really going to close. So you can't truly fill this because it's not a closed shape. These are each individual lines here. Okay, so just a little FYI, just an extra step that you need to do. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this. Zooming in is great. So get these as close as you possibly can. They don't have to be on top of each other, but these are, you know, as close as you can. And I'm going to teach you how to close these shapes very easily. All right. So you're going to take your direct selection tool and you're going to select the end of this line. So it should mark it blue. And you're going to hold the shift key down on your keyboard and select this box. So the only 2 points should be selected are these 2 endpoints. And this is a little advanced, so just kind of bear with me here. You're going to go to, Object. And you're going to go, okay, so you're going to go up to Object on your Finder. I know you can't see that on the keyboard here. Here, let me share my screen again. Desktop again, so you can see my selections. Okay, go up to Object. Hopefully you can see this. No problem, Jeff. Sorry, just got your thing. Can you guys see this now, my Illustrator artboard? Yeah. It's cropped. Should be my whole desktop. Okay. So you're going to select each point, hold down the shift key, and then go up to Object and go to Path and choose Join. And that's going to join these 2 points. Let me zoom in here. Now, if you wanted this to be like, you know, a peak, so it's sharp on the top, just go ahead and click on your direct selection tool and choose, again, just one of the lines or one of the vector points and pull these together individually. So that creates the point. Okay, so then you're not done yet. You have to join these 2. So I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm going to pull this line up with my selection tool as close as I can. That's pretty good. Click off of it, choose the direct selection tool and do the same thing. Select that first square, hold down the shift key, select this end of this vector point. Again, go up to Object, Path, Join. If I wanted this to be, you know, didn't want this step here, click off of it, and you're going to click right on one of the vectors and pull that together so it's more of a sharp turn. But it's a closed path. Same thing over here. Let me zoom in. So this has to be fully closed in order to fill it. I'm going to take this, I'm going to pull this out a little bit more. Shift, select, Object, Path, Join. And then click off of it, and I can kind of manipulate that to be more like the other side. Now, this is considered a closed shape. So if I select it with my selection tool and I wanted to fill it, say, with another color, it could be fillable. You can always go in here and change the vector points using our direct selection tool. So that's just kind of when I wanted to show you that because a lot of the students were having issues with that. You can use the pen tool as well. Now that's not listed as one of your tools, but the pen tool is kind of cool because if you click on your artboard, it's going to create a very simple shape that you don't even have to worry about joining all those lines using the line segment tool. The pen tool is just a little trickier of a tool, and it looks like a little pen here. Because of how it's not like you're using it like a pencil or anything. So that's why it's a little trickier. You guys will be working with this as you go forward. As long as it's a closed shape, you're actually closing it, you can fill it with whatever. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to use the pen tool. Another thing to consider is if you're using shapes, if you don't click and drag initially, if you just click one time with this shape tool, whatever shape tool, it can give you your radius that you want, how many points of the star that you want. So you could actually set the star points here before you create the star. Pretty cool. Then you click OK and it's going to place it in there. And that same thing goes for the rectangle. If you click, instead of clicking and dragging, if you just click one time with that tool in the artboard, it's going to give you, say, sizing options. So you can do 2 by 2 square, whatever. Same thing with the ellipse tool. You can kind of set the size. Polygono tool too. You can set the number of sides here with the polygono tool. polygon tool. Geez, I can't talk today. So those are your shape tools all in here. If you don't see any of the shapes in there, say, oh, well, I only see my rectangle. There's no ellipse or there's no star. No fret. If you go to the very bottom of your toolbar, there's like 3 dots, and it's, if you hover over it, says edit toolbar. Go ahead and click on that. And I had to do this with certain things. This is just showing you more tools that are available that you can add to your toolbar. So let's just say you wanted to add your, these are all the ones that I have that aren't on my toolbox. Let's see, let's do the arc tool. Let's just pull that in there. I can click and pull it into my toolbar, and here it is right here. So this is like the arc tool. So if you don't see any specific tool that you should be working in, like the square, ellipse, polygon, star, and line segment, click on this bottom 3 little dots at the very bottom of your toolbar, and you can add it by clicking and dragging it into your toolbar. Okay. All right. So let's get started here. The neighborhood, I would, you know, obviously you can do, I'm just going to show you how I would do it so you guys can get started. The ellipse tool, yeah. So let's say, let's start with the house shape. I can do a simple square. And, you know, you could use a picture if you want to trace something that you're, you know, maybe you're taking a picture of the front of your house that you kind of want to trace. You can use that as well. I'm just kind of going off of something that in my head here. So now what you just saw me do is I just created another rectangle, and say I want to copy this so it's the same size. I hold down my Option key and drag it to the right, and that just makes an instant duplicate object without me doing a copy and a paste. Now you can also do a copy and paste, edit copy, edit paste. It does the same thing, but that's just kind of a nice shortcut to it. Okay, then you could do a door, and you can use your selection tool to manipulate your shapes, whatever you want to do. You can use your line segment tool to add details. And I'm just adding the windows here. Maybe that would be smart to just copy that over. Select the whole thing, do an Alt Option or copy paste so I have an exact duplicate. And then, you know, let's see here. If you do the star tool and you click on your artboard one time before setting it, I can do a 3-point star, but really that's your triangle, and that could be right there, boom, your roof. And I'll show you that again. So if you go to your star and you don't click and drag it out yet, although now mine's set to that, if you click one time on the artboard, you could set it to 3 points, and boom. There you go. I'm going to hold the Shift key down and pull my bounding box, and that's how you can resize that. Same thing here. You can say, you know, now my line width is a little different than my width here. So I have a 1-point stroke here, and I have a 0.49. I can change that to be the same if I wanted to, right there. Now, if I wanted to add color, again, here's your swatch box. You can also, if you go up to Window, and choose color or swatches. I usually like to do color or the swatches. You can also pick a color in here in your color panel. You have a slider. So like, let's say you want to pick like, you know, like a brown, you can pull it in here. It's going to fill it in your fill, and you can drag this into your color swatches to add it to your swatches so that you don't have to keep looking for that same color. If you want to use that within your you know, you can add that same color from your swatches very easily. Now I'm just changing my fill to white. I'm holding the Shift key down to select all of my lines for that one. For the door, it's not too bad. And then I'm going to set a no fill or no stroke. And this is the little line that's going through, like a do not line looks like. That just means there's no stroke or no fill if you have that, to keep it simple. Any questions about that? It's pretty fun. Play around with like the shapes. You can even add gradients. If you ever played around with gradients before, pull it up, gradient under window. This is your gradient box, which it always starts with black and white, but you can add the color. So let's grab that swatch. I'm going to dump it right into here. And I have to set this as my fill, not my stroke. So the fill is the gradient. I just dragged and dropped that brown in there. Now I just dragged that black out of there. So you can play around with this. This is your different gradient options. You can switch these around so that the white's on the right. You can change the way that the gradient is oriented. So you can go from maybe a more linear to a radial gradient or free form gradient. Kind of allows you to do different things to that. So you can play around with that. You can also add color to that. Just drag and drop it in there. Okay, so that's kind of fun to play with. Now, if you have a gradient that you want to save, go ahead and drag and drop it into your swatch box, and you can always add this to your whatever you're, whatever you're designing there. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and create a landscape. So I'm going to take the oval or the elliptical and create my first grassy area here. And I just pulled out an oval. It's okay if it goes past the trim edge. And because we work in kind of a layer form, it's going to go in front of whatever I just first created. Now, how do I set that back? So I want it to go behind my house. So I'm going to go up to, with it selected, I'm going to go up to Object, Arrange, and I'm going to go to Send to Back. Send to backward doesn't necessarily mean it'll go completely in the back. So send to back is definitely a for sure, I'm sending this to back. Sending to back could be, okay, it's just going to go behind one window and one door. So that's kind of the differences between those. All right. Now I'm going to pull this down a little bit. And hey, baby, I want to put a gradient on that. So I'm going to go up to gradient. Have fun with it. I'll pull up my little gradient box here. And let's say I want to change the, I want the green to be on the top, or actually the yellow to be on the top and the green more to be on the bottom. We can change the rotation here under this angle. Let's do 180. There we go. You can see it kind of changed there. All right, I'm going to do another little circle. We'll put this down here. Play around with that. Okay. Maybe we set the sky while we're at it, because that's probably what we should have done in the beginning, but I didn't. If you click on this one time, you can actually set your sky to the width of your canvas. So let's do 11 by 8.5. Just type in there. Boom. Perfect. We just need to go up to Object, Send to Back, and we're going to make this, we're going to set the mood here. We're going to do like an orange. We'll just say this is like sunset. And again, if we wanted to kind of play around with the gradient, we can add this gradient in here as well. Oops, what am I doing? You can also change like how that gradient is dispersed by clicking on the aspect ratio. Kind of play around with it, see kind of what you come up with. You can also do clouds. Clouds are fun. You can do these as simple like shapes up here. You can duplicate them and reshape them with your selection tool. And I'm just doing like copy paste. Let's see. You guys can get really creative with this. Maybe something simple like that. Take a little longer here. And then you can always shift select all 3 items, and you can go up to copy paste or Command V or Command C, Command V to copy that. And then you can kind of make it bigger, smaller, kind of play around with it. Bring to front. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, okay. Let's put a street in there. I could just do like a rectangle here, just make it go from the one side to the other. Choose your selection tool to change the look of it. Let's get a little darker here. And we'll do no stroke. I mean, you can do like a perspective thing too if you wanted to. Like, let's say if you wanted to add a perspective to this 3D, you can. I'm just doing a straightforward shot. It's just the easy, you know, an easier approach. You guys are just learning this, so I don't want you guys to go too crazy. I want you guys to be able to use the tools, you know, initially just kind of playing around with it. All right. I'm going to choose the line segment tool, and I'm going to create a line. I'm just going to drag it over, hold the shift key down so it's a perfect linear line, and I'm going to make it a white stroke. So you can see it's like a white line here, but I want to make it look like a dashed road line. You know how they have the dashes in there? So with that selected, I'm going to go up to, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Where's my stroke? I have so many things going on here. Go to stroke. Oh, I guess it's up here somewhere. I just couldn't find it. Here we go. All right. So you have your stroke panel with that line selected. Now, don't forget, if you open a panel like this, there are more options under here usually. If you click on this upper right-hand corner lines, you can usually show more options of this tool. So know that that's available if you click on that. Sometimes it doesn't always, you can hide it, you know, for more space, or you can show it for more information. Now I'm going to keep mine at 1 point. If I go thicker, you know, obviously the line will be thicker. And keep it 1 point. And actually, let's do 2 points so you can see a little bit better. And then I'm going to click on dash line. And this is where you can create a nice dashed road line. It's kind of cool. Play around with that. You can do really cool like trees. You know, you could do circle trees, kind of be creative with this. You know, just very simple circle with a square trunk, you know, a skinny square trunk. Just pay attention to your stroke and your fill, and then bring whatever to the front if you want this layered, and then you can center it. So that could be like a tree. You can also do some cool things like, let's go to the star tool again, and we're going to click, we're going to do 3 points again, like a triangle. And we're going to make this much thinner. So you could do trees like this too. And I'm just going to copy and paste this little trunk and use it for this tree. And then say if you want a forest of trees, you can copy and paste that same tree and use it for your background. And you can make it smaller, you know, do shift, make it smaller. You can make it bigger. You know, the variations are nice so that, you know, it doesn't look like all one duplicate. See, like if I wanted to put this in the back of this circle, I could go up to object and send backward until it actually goes back behind that circle. just take a couple steps here. Let me zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. That's the only frustrating thing. You have so many different layers here. And that's another command bracket. There. Oh, it's not going backwards. I guess I have too much going on here. So for this, you know, just to not be overly complicated here, let me pull this down a little bit. Let me try and keep going. Should go behind it at some point. No, it's not. All right. I think I just have a lot going on here. So just use your send to back and forward. You also have layers too under window. This is a little bit more detail. You guys don't have to worry about using layers, but that would be more control of, you know, how I could have the landscape being in front of certain things. So, you know, you can set a different layer for each one. I have a lot going on here. So if, like, for instance, if I wanted this to be my front, you know, all of these things would be in the front, I would create its own layer and have that go in front of my trees. Is there a way to make different colors to be on the same plane? What do you mean by that? I guess can you explain that a little bit? Same colors on a different plane. Like the green treetops be one unit. Oh yeah, yep. So that's kind of what layers are for too. So like, let's put trees on one layer. So I would have to select all the trees, and I'm holding down the shift key, tree tops and tree trunks. And then once they're all selected, I can go to my layers and choose create new layer, and I can name this trees. But don't forget, see this little blue dot here? It says on layer 1, because they're still blue. They're still on the first layer. We have to move that little blue dot up to the top layer where it says trees. Now you'll see that blue change to red. So now you have a little bit more ease with, you know, manipulating these. So you can lock the first layer, which has everything else on it except for the trees, and you can just move the trees themselves or edit them. If you wanted to group the trees together, because right now they're not grouped, so you could move them all together, you just go up to object group once they're selected, and you can move them all together. You just have to group them. But when you group them, you have to ungroup them in order to manipulate them again. But that's how the layers come in. They're just, it's like easier to manipulate. Yep. So go ahead and have fun with this. Don't worry about layers yet, because a lot of people get kind of caught up in, you know, you're dealing with a lot of stuff initially as a starter. So I don't want you guys to get too wrapped up in the layers. Can be kind of confusing, but just know that that's an option going forward. Hold on. There we go. That's kind of how that would work. You can change the colors again. Say if I wanted to change this, you could double click on the fill. You can choose another color to change that to. And I'm just color picker, and it's adding it to my gradient that I picked. Have fun with it. If you feel like you want to kind of play around more with the pen tool, go for it. You know, you could do some really cool stuff with the pen tool. It's a little bit more free form. Like for instance, if you wanted to do like a walkway, you know, say like we'll start here, you could do, now this is all very easy to me because I've used this for so long. So this can be a very frustrating tool, and I don't want you guys to get frustrated with this. So don't feel like you have to use it. Let me see here. Let me fill this. But this is the pen tool. And again, you can kind of do your own thing, and then take the direct selection tool will help you make it look a lot better. So you're kind of just manipulating the lines here so that, oops, you know, they're not as crazy, because like I did it very quickly at first, but I know that I did like a really bad job of it. So I have to go in here and fix it. The less vector points you have, the better when you do this, because the lines will be much smoother. So as you can see there, I just deleted an anchor point. I'm going to delete this one too. I have a negative anchor point pen that shows up here. And that's how you would delete that. This is a little bit more advanced for you guys. You don't have to worry about doing that. And like I said, this tool can be very frustrating. So don't feel like you have to use it. You can just use your, you know, line tools and play around with that. I was just kind of showing you the option if you want to play around with the pen tool a little bit. And, you know, you can kind of set this, oops, play around with it and pull this inward a little bit because we're kind of going away. I'm not the best illustrator, but you know, hey, I try my best here. You know what I mean? So just try different things. Okay. You can't really do that with the line tool. That's why I wanted to show that to you. If you want to play around with the pen tool, if you feel like you're not going to get frustrated, that's something that you can definitely play around with. I do have a pen tool game that can get you a little bit more understanding of how the tool works too. I can post that to announcements if you guys want to play around with that. But for the most part, get your shapes in. You have to have, yep, 5 shapes, 5 different shapes to create. Don't forget, it doesn't have to be your neighborhood per se. You can even make it up. I just made this neighborhood up. And then when you're done, and set your mood. I set my mood at like a sunset or a sunrise. DGD101 assignment 2. And you're just gonna save this out, your first and last name, as an AI file, so that whenever you upload it, I can get right into it in Illustrator and see how you worked with your shapes. So it should be an AI file, and that's what you're going to upload. Now I have a student example I can show you. I have one student example here. Let me go back here so you can at least see. I only taught this class, the first time this class was ever taught was last mod. So I only have, you know, very few examples to show you, but I can show you this one, which I think is a good example. Now yours doesn't have to look like this, obviously, but this is a good example of another student's kind of an artistic way to play around with their neighborhood shot here. And this looks like a sunset, sunrise type of a shot. Have fun with this. You know, if you have questions, let me know. Just use the tools that are listed in there. You don't have to use the pen tool. That's if you want to get a little bit more advanced. But just have fun with it. I'm going to open up the other one that I did in the last demo here, last example. So you can at least see a couple other examples. This is the one that I did for last class as a demo. And I added little, let me zoom in here, little things like these little arches I just did with the line tool. I don't know if you can see that. So I just did like a line here, oops, and then a line here. And then I adjusted that. Now I can't fill these because they're not a closed shape, but I can give them that color, and then that kind of adds to the detail. And it's very simple, but it adds to the detail of the roof. Same thing on the upper part of the windows here, just a little detail, a little stylistic detail to give. Now I did oval oval squares. I don't know if you guys will have this option. You might need to look at it underneath your edit toolbar, but I have a rounded rectangle tool that I did those trees with. So this gives you more of a rounded edge, and you can change that edge if you click on it and click right on the artboard, the corner radius, the higher it is, the more corner curve that you're going to get. See how it's more rounded than this? I just put 0.3 instead of 0.2, and you can see how much it's almost becoming an oval. And I just did like little simple clouds with the circle tool, oval, or ellipse tool. I did a very light gradient on the background sky. I did the road like I did before, and then I just kind of created these nice little city-like block buildings, and I copied and pasted it, so it's like a duplicate. Now I'm going to show you something really quick, and you don't have to do this. Say if this is bothering you. See this bottom part where you can see the landscapes going over the edge? There's a really easy way to get rid of that when you're completely done. So all you would need to do, and you can play around with this too, but you don't necessarily have to do it. Take your square tool. Let's give it a no fill, no stroke. And you're going to click right on the artboard, and we're going to do 11 by 8.5. Has to be exactly the same size as the canvas. Go right over top with this tool, or with this shape. So it's like, you know, no fill, no stroke. It's just a box. And then I'm going to shift, with that selected, I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to select the objects that are going outside of this square. So shift, select, just these two objects with my square tool selected, or square shape selected. And then I'm going to go up to object, clipping mask, object, clipping mask, and make. Now, because this is another issue, because these objects are being grouped with my square, it's going to bring it in the front. So what we need to just do is send this to the back. But it's a nice way to crop this out if those are really bothering you, or if you want to show it as a presentation. There's another way you can show this without doing that presentation wise too. Let me undo this. If you wanted to undo this, go up to object, clipping mask, and this should release this. For some reason it is not selecting it. Hold on. Release. There we go. You can also click on this I think it's presentation mode. Here, hold on. Oops. Yeah, there we go. So it kind of crops it out if it's a presentation that you're showing. But, oh. So any questions about that? That's pretty much what I have for you for this assignment. Just playing around with the shapes, having fun with color. Some good stuff here. Let's see. Oh, I already saved this. Okay. No questions about that? You guys are easy. If you do, let me know. We're going to go right into assessment 2 here. I'm going to give you guys a 5-minute break so that we have a little bit of time to regroup and get some more coffee and all that good stuff. This assessment is really a really cool project too. I think you guys will have a lot of fun with this one as well. We're going to be working in Illustrator again, but we're going to be working more with the type tool, the text tools, okay? So 5 minutes, I'll give you guys a little break here, and then we'll go on with that demo. Does that sound good? All righty. I'll meet you guys back in 5 minutes. All right, can you guys hear me? All right, great. Okay, so let's talk about your assessment 2. We're going to be doing a really cool assignment, and this is going to be something that you can, it's a little bit more open creatively because you can choose your own quote. So you're going to download the type worksheet that's provided. We'll take a look at that. You're going to follow the instructions to complete each step, and then you're going to save your document again as assessment 2 as an AI file. There's 2 parts to this, okay? So you're going to choose or write an inspiration quote or phrase. Try to keep your quote or phrase under 10 words so that it fits easily into a social media post. You're going to open a new document in Illustrator. You're going to size it to pixels now. Now, originally, when we did the neighborhood art board, we did inches. We're going to do pixels instead for this assessment. You're going to save it as such, assessment 2, first and last name. You're going to place your quote into your document using a text box. Use adjustments in your character panel to change the font size, and alignment. Consider how you can make your quote look like the message it is telling in words. So you're going to kind of create this visual from the font of what is expressing it in the quote itself. Use your swatches panel to change the color of targeted words in your quote. Save your file once again, and then you're going to export your file as a JPEG. This will be what you will turn in. The new file name should be named Assessment 2, first and last part 2.jpg. Okay. So we're going to go forward here, and let's take a look at the actual instructions in your assessment, because there's just more information in here that you need to take a look at. So go ahead and read through the background. Talks about the text tool. And then again, these are the 2 parts that you'll be breaking this down in. So the first part will be the worksheet, which go ahead and click and download that. And you're going to follow the instructions. So let's go ahead and do this first worksheet here. All right, so you're going to see that when you open this, it's a PDF file. Now, I had students that had a lot of problems with this because they weren't opening it correctly. So if you double click on, once you download it and click on it, it's going to show it in Adobe, okay, Acrobat. This is not where you're going to be actually editing this. Okay, so don't open it in this way. I'm just showing you what this looks like. So what you're going to do is you're going to download that PDF to your computer. So download that PDF to your computer, and then you're going to open up Illustrator. And then once you're in Illustrator, you're going to go File, Open, and you're going to open that PDF that you downloaded, which, here we go, is the assessment here. Yeah, right there. I'm going to open up the empty one though. So it should be the assessment 2 worksheet. Just go File, Open in Illustrator. And what's going to happen is it's going to place it in Illustrator. So now that you can use your text tool to do the prompted questions in here. Okay, so it says use point type to type your name in the box below. Point type just means you'll be using the type tool in here to create your type. Now let me go find my type tool. There we go. If you hit T on your keyboard, it goes right to it. So if you don't see it, there's your type tool. Go ahead and click on that. And what you're going to do is you're just going to click right inside this box, and you're going to type your name with the type tool. Now you can adjust this. If you want to adjust this with the type tool, you're going to select it once you're done typing it. And then I'm going to go up to my type options. Make sure you do the same. Go up to Window, go down to Type, go to Character, so you have your character panel. This character panel will allow you to see, your name in different typefaces. So when you choose a different typeface, it'll set it in that as long as it's selected, and then you can make it bigger here as well. You can also use your move tool. I'm using my selection tool, not move tool, selection tool, and you can also make it bigger this way. Just make sure if you're sizing it this way, you're going to hold the shift key down before sizing it, or else this is what will happen. And we don't want it to be distorted. So if you don't size it this way, make sure you hold the shift key down if you're sizing it this way, okay? I had some people with distortion issues before. Okay, you're going to copy and paste the word below into the two larger boxes. Click and drag on the word while holding the holding down shift to make it fill each of the boxes so that the word fills in. The word fills and is centered in the box. Okay, so copy and paste the word below into the two boxes. Click and drag on the word while holding the shift key. So I'm going to copy and paste. So I'm going to go up to Edit, Copy, or Command C, Edit, Paste, or Command V, and we're just going to put it right into the second box. Now hold the shift key down. You can put it all the way up in the corner here. Hold the shift key down and pull it out so that it fills the rest of this box. Doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to see that you're able to do that without distorting it. Command C, Command V, paste it again. Hold the shift key down, pull that bounding box out. What I don't want to see is this. Okay, I don't want to see it distorted in that way or in this way. When you distort type, that's a no-no. Holding on that shift key will help you make it bigger. And you'll see the point size change up here too. Went from 81 points to 104. That's another way to do it. All right, any questions about that? Pretty cool, huh? All right, so the next one is change the font in the word below. So you can either select it with your move tool. Actually, you can, or you can, tape the type tool and actually highlight it. It's completely up to you. And go up to your character palette, and this is where you can kind of play around with the typeface. Increase the character size by 3 points. So I'm going to take the type tool, and you're going to select it, clicking on top of it, and you're just going to see how this little, okay, so you could do it in two ways. You're going to do 3 points. So it's at 30 points now. It needs to be at 33. So you can either hit this up arrow 1, 2, 3 times, or you can type in here 33 and enter. Okay. This one says decrease the character size by 3 points. So you're going to do the opposite. So right now it's set at 30. So you're going to go down 1, 2, 3. So you're going to go to 27. You can also type it in here. The next one, these are a little trickier. Some people had issues with this, so let's go over it. Create a text box that is the same size as the box below. Now, there's different ways you can place text. Before you just saw me click and just type. Just click once with the type tool. But there's another way you can make a type box, and that's instead of just clicking one time, you're clicking and dragging the text box out. So that's a way to set type as well. So for these two parts, you'll need to do that. So select the type tool, and you're going to click right in the kind of the inside, and just, it might even just pull out anyway, because right now it's showing just filling up this box. So we're good to go. Same thing here. The only thing that we're going to do here, create a text box that is the same size as the box below and change the text to a Myriad Pro 21 points. So click, oh, we're going to click and drag. So when I clicked and dragged, look how easy that's set. Now I just have to change this. Mine's at Myriad Pro right now, but it's not set at 21. It's set at 27. So we have to change that to 21. And there you go. Any questions about that? Pretty easy, right? And then you're just going to save this out as an AI file. Let's take this to the desktop. And that's what you would submit for that. Any questions about that? No? I'm going to say that's probably a no, right? PowerPoint tools, somewhat similar, yeah. Yep. All right, the second part, so that's the first part. The second part is you're going to choose or write an inspirational quote. Try to keep it, 10 words, so it's not super long. You're going to open the document in Illustrator and you're going to size it 1080 pixels by 1080. And you're going to name it First Last AI, Assessment 2. Place your quote in your document using a text box. Use adjustments in your character box. How can you make it look like the actual words? All right, so there's tons and tons of quotes online. I'm just going to look up motivational quotes. And stuff that you can be inspired by, you could just kind of look online. Just kind of make sure that, it's not super long. I'm going to just copy this one. So Command C copies that. And then I'm going to go into Illustrator. And I'm going to do File New. And this is where you have to pay attention to your units. So we're going to do pixels instead of inches. And we're going to do 1080. And this is for web purpose. That's why it's a little different. So we're doing pixels instead of inches. 1080 by 1080. Looks like that. Although right now we are, let's see, actual size. This is the actual size. It's huge. So that's 100%. All right, so we're going to take the type tool and we're going to click one time on there. It's going to come up with some Greek type, and that's fine. That's a Greek type. And you're going to just do Command V, which is paste, or go up to edit, paste. That's going to paste that quote in there. All right. So you can either select it with the type tool or just with the selection tool. We're going to make it a lot bigger. And this is where you can have a lot of fun with this. Now, in order to fit this in here, I need to take the type tool and I need to break this. So what I mean by that is I have to put the cursor where I want it to be broken to the next line and hit return. Now you can break this in a way that makes sense for the quote. And I'm just doing return. So I'm going to do a select all, which is Command A. And then I go back to my character panel box. This is where you can change the font. If you go to the paragraph, which is, if you don't see that, it's under here, under window. Where's that? Type, it's under type. Paragraph, it's kind of stashed under type there. This will set your alignment. So let's say if I wanted this all to be center, I change it to the center box, which is the second box in. Okay, so my quote is, to live a creative life, you must lose our fear of being wrong. So choose a font that you think would best represent this. You might need to do a little digging. You might kind of take a look at what fonts mean. Like I said, typography has so much history to it. You just want to make sure that it's readable and that you're choosing a font that's visually appropriate for what you're showing. Now I'm just going to do, and you can download fonts too if you want to. There you go. Just looked up Love Epsom. Is it really? Interesting. And I took Latin for 3 years. I should know that. So I just chose like a very neutral font. But what I want to do is I want to create some keywords. I want to emphasize keywords. So what do you guys think would be one keyword I can emphasize in this? Creative, yeah. And how do you think I could push that forward to look more creative? What type of font do you think I could use? A more creative font, right? So, that could be very subjective. Yep. But I think you all know what I mean when I say creative. You want to do something different than a neutral font, right? And it could be something silly, something more handmade looking, drawn, more casual. It could be kind of fun. Let me try to find one that's kind of fun here. Creative, but is, you can easily read it. Yeah, you could definitely do that. Like here's one here, more creative. Let me try to pick one that's a little easier to read. Let's do this one. And then you can emphasize that. You guys are great. Exactly. Like I had a lot of students do this project before and I didn't emphasize like enough how to make a word stand out and to do that. So I had a lot of students that just turned in one typeface and it was just very like one song type thing, one beat. And, you know, what we're looking for here is more of a visual explanation using type. Yep, bland. Yep. To live a creative, and I can probably break this down, creative life. And I can even make life that same typeface, the sign painter. Let's see if I do that. Sign painter. Just make it smaller maybe, or just a little bigger. So play around with the size. We must lose our fear of being wrong. So wrong could also be something that's, you know, a lot different in terms of typeface. Maybe it's thick and bold and big, you know, it's everybody's fears to be wrong. So why don't you visually express that with a very strong looking font, you know, something like that. Now I have a little bit of an issue with line spacing here. I want it to all kind of read together and not have a big gap here. So I can adjust my line spacing if I choose these two lines of text by going into my character palette and adjusting it here. Here's my line spacing. So I just have to figure out which line spacing is going to work here. I might have to go up. Let me see. So this is your line spacing. It's actually your leading is another term for it. And it's right here, right next to your size tool. So I'm going to play around with that so that it reads together. There's no weird gap because you don't really want it to be too gapped out where it's hard to read. And then maybe this kind of gets a little different too. Let's do like a little anonymous, almost like a hand script. Now, another thing that you can do, or bold, yeah, you're right, or even a different color. Think about color, think about scale, think about the typeface expressing each of these words. Another thing that you want to make sure of is to add these quotes, these quote marks. But we're going to do this a little differently because, you know, some of the quotes don't look real quote-like, real nice. So I'm going to change these to a different font. And, you know, this type of a font would do great for that. So I'm going to just highlight this first quote and I'm going to change it to be this font. So I'm going to just highlight this with my type tool. And whatever this Great Vibes is, I'm going to change it to that. Okay. Actually, this actually doesn't look real good either. Let's go and find a font that this is actually going to look like a quote, sorry. More of a stylistic quote. It's actually not going to work. Forget what I used before. See how they're just kind of lines. I can also go up to object, let's see, type, insert special character hyphens and dashes, quote marks, here we go. Double left quotation marks can also be found under type in your Finder. Insert special character quotation marks, double left quotation marks can be added this way. And I'm going to show you that again. Go up to object. I'm sorry, go up to type. I'm getting all confused here. Insert special character, quotation marks, double left quotation marks is the first one you would choose at the beginning. And then at the end, you would choose double right quotation marks. That's the way to do it because some of the fonts don't quite look, you know, they just look like two lines. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually copy and delete this out of here and take my type tool and just paste this in here separately. That way I have a little bit more control over the size. I can make them bigger and I don't have to worry about the spacing issues or anything like that. So I'm going to delete this one out and I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to just copy and paste this one over to here. So it's like a separate box. Yeah, it's a nice workaround for sure. This time I'm going to go up to type, insert special character, and I'm going to use the double right quotation marks because we want to end it the right way. We don't want to use the other ones. So you can emphasize the quote marks as well. And I just think it's easier to do it in a separate type box. It's a little difficult to get a handle on that, but once you do, I think it's better. Be creative with it. What if, you know, you could do the same thing with Creative Life. I could have taken this out and maybe did it like a little bit of a rock to it, you know, like a rotation. So think about things like that. You can always use color to emphasize certain things. You know, maybe Creative Life becomes a gradient color. Let's see. Or something kind of cool. Let's see, gradients. Something that pops out and expresses creativity. And you can actually play around with a lot of different, here's patterns and all kinds of stuff. Oh, I just lost it. So, you know, play around with it. I can even do something like this where it's like all different colors. Oh. Let me bring this back, hold on. There we go. I lost my quote back here. And my quote here. A rainbow effect, yeah. I'm going to lock these because I have a feeling they're going to be, if you don't want, you know, if these are getting in the way, you can always lock them, which is kind of cool. If you're not using layers, you just select what you want locked and go up to object lock selection. That way you can never touch it and will never, you know, get in the way. And you can always unlock it. I think this is a little hard to select because there we go. Maybe wrong is red. You know, something like that. That's kind of cool. You can add gradients. You could do whatever you want. You can even add shapes to this. Let's say you want to do something really cool shape-wise, because it is kind of talking about more, you know, the creative part of everything, being more creative. So bring up the stroke. I'm just going to make this like a very simple shape. We're going to just play around with abstract shapes. I'm going to rock this a little bit. And then I'm going to duplicate this, make it a little smaller, and we're going to make this yellow stroke. I want to just make sure it doesn't get in the way of the message though. So something like that. A rainbow gradient, yes, you could do a rainbow gradient. The only thing I would have to do is I would have to change this from a font, which is fine, to a shape. And I could do that very easily and show you how to do that if you want me to. I'm going to copy this. This is advanced, so don't feel like you have to do this. I just copied the word creative. I'm going to paste it in here. Now it's a font, so sometimes it's harder to add like gradients to this because it's a font. So let's go ahead and make it, I'm gonna make it just black for now. We're gonna go up to type with it selected, and we're going to say create outlines. Yep. So it takes it from being a font to a shape. Okay, so then you can add very creative gradients to this at this point. You can't do that as a font necessarily. You can change the letter, but you can't apply certain effects to it, okay? So let's say I wanted to exchange this out. Have this over. And I can make a actual, like, let me bring up my gradient box here. Because we were talking about rainbow. This isn't quite rainbow. but you can add the different colors in here to make it a rainbow, more fun. What else are we missing here? Green. Like, that's pretty creative, right? Ooh, that's fun. All right, so let's say we're going to use this word. You just have to place it in here a little differently because it's no longer a font, and you won't be able to change it as far as a font like size, other than, you know, if you shift it up and down this way. But it's no longer recognizing this as a font anymore. So that's the only thing that's a little different. But you can play around with that if you feel like, you know, you want to kind of get a certain effect. Pretty cool. All right, when you're done, you're going to save as and DGD101 assessment 2. And I think this is, let me see here, second part. Okay, so you're going to name this part 2 because the first worksheet is part 1. So this is part 2, and that is going to be a JPEG. So save the AI file just so that you have it, and you can change it whenever you can, you know, want to. And then what you're going to do is you're going to, oh, cancel. We don't want that. We're going to do a file export, and you're going to do a file export as, and you're going to choose a JPEG. So this is what you'll actually upload, the JPEG for this. But don't forget, you also have a worksheet. So let me share my desktop to add with this. So you're going to have 2 parts. So you're going to have this JPEG, which I'll double click to submit, and then you'll have the this worksheet, which is an AI file. This worksheet. Don't forget to open it the way that I showed you in Illustrator, or else you're going to have a heck of a time. So these would be the 2 files that you're going to submit. Any questions about that? That's pretty fun. I think you guys will enjoy that for sure. All right, before we wrap it up, I just want to review some of the questions for the lecture quiz so that you guys are all on the same page. So let's go ahead. According to the lecture, the artboard setting in Adobe Illustrator refers to what? And this should be the number of pages in your document. Remember how we did the pages of the artboards? So that would be the answer for that, pages to your documents. The option that is the best brightness option that I would say would be to use in Illustrator would be medium light. And we talked about that and how to change that. The columns that I would prefer to work with are 2 for my toolbar. There's options there. And then this is one that I didn't go over, which we should, is the most important useful shortcut used on your Illustrator screen. And I don't know about you guys, but Command Z is one of the ones I always use, and I've been using as I did the demo. Command Z is the undo option, right? I always feel like I'm always Command Zing, and I want to do that in my real life. Command Z that in my life. Did not know that? Yeah, Command Z will is an undo. So you can, instead of going back up to your Finder and doing edit undo, Command Z is the shortcut key for an undo. It's one of, and you will definitely get to know that very well. I know, I do it a lot. Okay, Central Z control. Okay, so PC is a little different with the shortcut keys for sure. Yeah. Yep, so that's it for the lecture quiz. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap it up? Have fun. Enjoy this week. I know you guys will definitely enjoy this week because I think the projects are really cool. I think you guys will really enjoy it. It seems like the last class that I taught last mod, the students really enjoyed both of the projects this week. So, all right, guys. Well, if you have any questions, let me know. Whatever you missed, just I'm going to be posting the recording. We went over your discussions, a few other things, and then I showed the assignment too. I'm not sure if you came in for that. The assignment 2 I did go over as well. Okay. Yeah, so just the discussions, but you can always go back and listen to the recording. All right, guys, I'm gonna have to wrap it up. It's that time, but let me know if you have any questions going forward. Thanks for coming in. And for those of you listening to the lecture, thanks for listening. I'll see you on the discussion boards. All right, have a great one. Thank you, guys.